get up on that cymbal. He's gonna get up real here. Man. Pambles. When did it get Pambles? But
Hello and welcome to Meeting of the Minds, the interview discussion show that tackles topics in the atheism-theism landscape. My name is Christopher Mowdy and I'm your host, and I am joined here today by Drew Gleepter. How you doing, Drew?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Drew is joining me here in the sunny eastern side of the United States, and we're actually in the same city, just chilling out in two different parts. And we're going to have a pretty bad to the bone discussion. I just want everybody to know that right now, because we have Drew, who is an atheist. Now, he's an atheist. I'm an atheist. So you might be thinking to yourself, Chris, come on, give me a break. What are you guys really going to disagree on? Well, I don't allow supernatural variables into my worldview. And Drew doesn't necessarily allow supernatural variables into his worldview. And he and I have had some awesome discussions before today's discussion that you will see unfold live before your eyes. And just to iron out how this discussion is going to unfold. And he's a really smart guy. And I can't wait for you, for everybody who is watching and listening, to get a piece of what he's throwing down. I hope that everybody can pick up what he's throwing down, because he has a perspective that I want to start from the get-go, is not to be mistaken as New Age. It is not to be mistaken as something that already exists, although it does engage in a little bit of what might be called, like, the Chinese menu philosophy, where he takes nuggets of the stuff that works, a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B, a little bit from column C, and he makes that his own eclectic philosophy. Have I said anything that you disagree with so far, Drew?
No, it's pretty solid. I don't think I could say that any better than myself.
Well, I want to make sure that your position is clarified. Now, and that was one of the things that I made sure to communicate with you in our previous conversations. In fact, Drew was so awesome. You were so excited to come on the show. You were like, "Give me homework. Tell me exactly what you want." And I was just like, all right, try to be more concise. Like my homework was just like, almost like nonsense. I was like, you have so many ideas. Pick one or two that you think are good. I mean, you just bring so much to the table. So without teasing the people anymore, let's get to brass tacks. I've changed the format of my show, by the way.
Okay.
I'm not going to do the introductory questions anymore. I'm not going to do the conclusion questions anymore. I'm just going to do the discussion.
Okay.
Because I think that.
Well, I'm glad I didn't prepare that.
Good. Well, and that's part of the reason why we're not doing it, is because I didn't prepare them. No, just kidding. So I just want to get to the meaty goodness that is this perspective that you have.
Excellent.
So, atheism with spirituality that is not New Age. Go.
Well, I think that was one of the most important things, is the separation between this and New Age spirituality, because oftentimes I feel that people who are of the New Age persuasion, they are of that mindset, and I think that the emphasis for me is that I'm not coming from any semblance of a spiritual mindset. I am a hard-fought atheist who personally encountered some spiritual experiences and approached them with a sincerely skeptical eye. And it's the scientific method with which I analyzed those spiritual experiences, things that many other people have had, but not necessarily from the perspective that I encountered it. So it's it ventures into that realm, but I have a strong emphasis on the rationality and what we can know for certain and what we absolutely cannot conclude.
Okay. So I just want to stop you there and point out that, and I'm probably going to do this every once in a while, just because I think it's important, to point out to the people that are listening that your perspective is based on a phenomenological experience that you had.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just notes in a journal
Right.
after, listening to white noise and reading lots of Kierkegaard. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is like something that an experience that you had that you're now trying to suss out based on, based on your interpretation of the scientific method, using logic and reason, and, being born out of your atheistic perspective.
Right.
Okay. So keep going. I just wanted to make that clear.
And I think that's another important part of it is that a lot of times people who claim and we spoke about this previously in our previous conversations about my trouble pinpointing a word for the experience itself. Whether I think we settled on epiphany. I think that was my favored term, but a lot of different people use different words for it. An awakening, a enlightenment itself, or nirvana, or there's, depending on your traditional dogmas, there's a lot of different ways to call it. But people come to it from many different ways, and many people will spend their entire lives in pursuit of such an experience. And for me, it was 100% accidental. There was no intention, there was no preparation, and that was almost to my peril, that I was not prepared in any way for what it was like, and the aftermath, and working on reconciling the worldview that I used to possess and the experience that I could not deny. So that's one of the most important things, I think, is that it was accidental. It was thrust upon me, and then it was, it's this whole process. It's been, I think, 2 years now, and the reason that I was so excited to come on this show is because this is a really great opportunity to continue to work out my own understanding and articulation of what it is and how it happened and what I think we can get out of it.
Excellent. Well, I hope that between the two of us, we can continue the unpacking process, because I think that you're really good at articulating yourself, and I really like the chewing the fat sessions that we've had in the past, where it's just like the two of us will just bounce ideas off of each other, and then eventually we'll take 10 pounds of stuff and fit it into a 5-pound bag.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So I want to get to the crux of your perspective, which runs counter to mine.
Uh-huh.
Right. So here's where we.
Yeah, right.
Here's the challenging part. Here's where the crossroads begins. Right. Mm-hmm. Where, for me, being a materialist atheist, I would say that consciousness is born out of and is therefore a manifestation of mind, or mind is a manifestation of brain.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And because brain is a material source from which mind just is a emergent property of. That's a more appropriate way of putting it. Mind is an emergent property of matter, which is brain.
Right.
And you would see it the complete opposite way.
Yes. And again, to emphasize that was not always the case. And it took a matter of experiencing consciousness without thought for me to even comprehend the possibility of an alternative perspective on that issue. And that's...
I just want to say it out loud and explicitly. You believe
consciousness is primary to matter.
So matter comes into existence because
of a fundamental substrate of the universe, which is consciousness itself. And that may be married to a more tangible energetic substrate, something that down the line our science may be able to, pinpoint and measure and give it a new name or whatever the case may be, and this is where I like to separate myself from the New Age perspective, because they take consciousness and it's this ethereal, non-physical thing, and I don't want to say that science is incapable of knowing or seeing or measuring. Just that physical matter itself is not the end-all, be-all. And there is really nothing about our science and what we know about the brain and about human consciousness that forbids consciousness itself existing independent of the brain.
Okay. So to delve deeper into your perspective, for the sake of clarity, you had given me some resources to read. And one of them was Aleister Crowley, right? And he was reiterating somebody else's perspective in the form of an analogy, such that there is and I'm going to paraphrase. There is a universal unconscious, but he called it, what did he call it? Something else. The something mind. I can't remember right now. I don't have my notes with me. But let's go with universal unconscious right now.
Okay.
And we have access to it. And its availability to us is like doled out or mediated by like a faucet.
Oh, right. I think you're talking about Aldous Huxley.
Thank you. Okay, so it wasn't Aleister Crowley. It was Aldous Huxley. Thanks for correcting me.
He called it the mind at large.
The mind at large. It wasn't the collective unconscious. It was the mind at large.
Right. Collective unconscious would be Jung, I think.
Thank you. So for the purposes of conversation, we have access to this mind at large, and in varying amounts. So think of it like a faucet. And there are experiences that we can have, like out-of-body experiences, meditation, psychedelics, and things like that open up that faucet.
Right.
And we have more or less access to that mind. And the mind is knowledge of all past, present, and future information at once.
Right.
Okay.
Pretty much all the possibilities for human thought, whatever it could possibly be imagined to be, all imagination, all current thought, everything that you could possibly possess as a human being as a thought, all at once.
Yes, but it's not practical for us to have access to that all the time, because that would run counter to our ability to adapt and survive.
Right.
So from a survival evolution perspective, we only need a skosh of access to that. But there are these other things that we can do to open up that faucet and have more of access to it.
Right.
Okay. So explain how that works. Explain how that, considering the advances that science has made using a bottom-up approach, explain how this top-down approach makes sense.
Well, it's like that. If you are to assume, for the sake of this argument, that consciousness, sort of like in the way that the electromagnetic field is generated by the smacking together of all of these subatomic particles that this physical matter consists of. It's radiating out of it. If you assume that consciousness on the same level is just radiating out of the universe, and everything that is constructed of physical matter is also constructed of this conscious energy. Our brains essentially are a mechanism, a circuitry. It's good to use a computer analogy.
Okay.
That then takes that inherent consciousness that is naturally just present, just naturally aware but not self-conscious. We put it through this wiring, this circuitry, that then kind of creates a feedback loop and turns it in on itself, so that we then gain this self-consciousness where we are, we have a firm sense of spatial presence of our place in time, of who we are as individuals, the separation of ourselves from other people, from the environment around us, all of these things that have built up over time through the evolution of our complex brain structures. But it's all a manipulation of that inherent consciousness. And it's difficult for us as human beings who have only ever known consciousness of this self-conscious nature. It's difficult for us to imagine a different way of being conscious. And that's the significance of meditation or prayer or psychedelics or whatever it is that people do to open up that valve and experience a little more of that raw awareness and less of that manipulated self-consciousness.
Okay. So, I gotcha. So because this show explores the difference between theists and atheists, theists engage in prayer, different forms of prayer that can get into some deep meditation. And what's to say that they're not tapping into that mind, that, that consciousness, that, at a level that is being filtered through their religion, that's revealing truths to them that just sounds like gobbledygook to everybody else, because they're just not meditating at that level, or they're not lacerating their backs, or they're not in that deep of a meditative state that what they're communicating, that what they're throwing down can be picked up.
And I like the word that you use there, filtering, because that's exactly how I like to look at it, is that we have this this raw, if we look at it like a light, you have white light, but you can pass that through a number of different filters and it'll come out looking completely different on the other side. And that's exactly what it is you're able to, whether you're religious or atheist or whatever your religion might be, you have a specific filter that you're passing this through. And you may be able to lessen parts of that filter and different structures that you've built to manipulate and pass that through to gain an alternative perspective. So you have people who are meditating, and while they are reducing certain aspects, which may be their sense of self, but people describe it as a feeling of oneness with their environment or with the universe. They've released a part of themselves, but if they have practiced, if they are meditating through specific dogmas and different things, they've still maintained some aspect of themselves with which to filter it. So is that what separates sane people from crazy people? Because it sounds like, using your analogy, that crazy people, and what I mean like clinically, people that have psychotic breaks, people that are suffering from like hardcore psychosis, like schizophrenics, people that are like truly demented, people that are clinically textbook crazy, that they would have access to this mind all the time. Yes. And that's actually, Aldous Huxley specifically talks about that in his book, The Doors of Perception. He says through his own experience, he understands directly the experience of someone with schizophrenia. He understands that if one were to take this raw awareness, this overwhelming just sense of awe at the world around you, and you started in on the wrong foot with some presupposition of paranoia or of fear or of something of that nature, then you suddenly have it's like a irreconcilable fear, an irreconcilable dementia that just turns everything into something ugly. Whereas it could be in Huxley's case something beautiful. Just having just one wrong step at the very beginning, suddenly all of what could have been awesome is now terrifying. Talking about sanity is that's a whole other ball of wax, honestly, because it gets into the question of reality and how we build that for ourselves.
Well, that's interesting because, let's face it, there was a while where, and this argument is still being used by biblical apologists, Christian apologists, the presuppositional argument. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm briefly, very little familiar, just through watching your show, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting because certain branches of the presuppositional apologetics would question reality, and that's exactly where they would go. And whereas some people would shy away from that, like, how do you know you exist? Sometimes the arguments would just get down to that, and people are just really unprepared to answer those questions. I would love to see a presuppositionalist get into that argument with you, because you would just be like, really? Let's start talking.
Yeah, right.
You'd start warming up your hands and just being like, oh, let's have that conversation. Yes, let's.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing is, and that's kind of my whole thing. We can, on my end of things is, I've just always been a big fan of argument. I've just always really enjoyed being able to hash out the closest thing we can get to truth just through discussion, through exchanging ideas.
Sure.
And there really are no ideas that I would shy away from. And it used to be that I would be very cynical, very mocking even of people who held religious or spiritual perspectives. And it's interesting now. It's I'm the last person you would think to be having this kind of conversation, to have come to these conclusions and to have these new perspectives. I really would never have seen myself getting there, but because I experienced those things, it's now something I'm not going to shy away from. I absolutely love delving into conversations that are not.
Well, I think that it's cool that you had the transformation, and I'd like to talk a little bit about things that change, things that are transformative, right? So let's pivot towards that for 1 second. So what was it like to have been one person before this experience and to have walked away from it a different person? Because as we had talked about previously, the epiphany that occurred was life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
From that point forward, you were asking questions about life in a metaphysical way differently.
Mm-hmm.
Or more appropriately, they might have been the same questions that you were asking before.
With different data.
Yes, exactly. The data looked so different to you. The data, it's like somebody taught you the difference between like spreadsheets and databases, and you were just like, yes, now I understand.
Right. And I mean, it really was. It's interesting because it's kind of a chicken or the egg question, whether the changes that were going on are the reason for the epiphany or vice versa. And I think it honestly was kind of a feedback system where there was an initial cause, but then it was kind of just reverberating and going back and forth. But it was a complete and total change in every aspect of my life, in my concepts of self and of purpose and my goals for myself in my life. I'd previously been severely depressed and suicidal for many years, and having this, it was as if who I used to be had actually died. And it was funny because born again Christians previously I would have easily said were the most outlandish or oftentimes offensive to more rational sensibilities of all the sects of Christianity.
Okay.
But through this experience, I now personally understand what it really means to be born again. And while it's not through biblical passages or of that particular religious dogma, I can understand how someone could find themselves feeling born again through their coming to Christianity. I understand what it's like to feel that you had a perspective on yourself previously, a concept of self, everything that you think you are, suddenly completely thrown out the window, and then you are forced to. I mean, and I use the word forced because for me it was difficult at times, but it could be much more positive than that, much less of a force and much more of a just like a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do see it as a bit of both for myself. It was in the very beginning extremely beautiful and awe-inspiring and just like the absolute happiest I've ever been in my life. But after that was a period of very difficult integration, which is now where we are 2 years down the line, where I'm trying to work out that harmonious balance between the two, because it's very difficult to completely change your life in that way.
Well, I want to let you know that I'm glad to hear that things changed, because it did sound like things weren't going so well, and you seem like so energetic and optimistic right now. And it's great to hear that the epiphany that you had and the experience that you had has changed you for the better.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I mean, it absolutely has. I honestly can say that I don't believe that I would be alive, and I certainly would not have a daughter if this had not happened to me. So I couldn't be more grateful for the experience, and I think that that's why I'm so motivated to continue thinking about it and talking to other people about it, because I think if I can overcome what it was that I was suffering, then I think the potential for this for other people is something that cannot and should not be ignored. You know, that there's serious potential for this to become something that is helpful to more people.
And you had mentioned this to me before, and this is one of the reasons why I did want to bring you onto the meeting of the minds, is because of where you are in your journey. Mm-hmm. I kind of wanted to make it clear to people that are watching that it's okay for the journey to be the destination. It's okay to be in transition. It's okay to have the kinds of questions that you're having right now. And I think that it's great to see somebody in the process because, like I said, you're so optimistic. You're asking all the right questions. I mean, the conclusions that you're coming to, like I said, I disagree with. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter because it's working for you. In fact, I have a viewer comment that somebody wants to bust your chops a little bit here.
Okay.
They say, why would we assume a conscious energy if none has ever been found or even hinted at?
My response to that would be that the way that I'm looking at this is as a potential theory of everything. And that has a specific physical science connotation to it. But in my eyes, this is a true theory of everything in that it does not limit itself to scientific pursuits. The empirical scientific method is extremely important. It's got a lot of merits, and I stick to it, you know, devoutly. But there's more to human existence than raw science and our gross anatomy and things of that nature. And to me, this idea extends beyond just our science. And I do believe that our science provides for this. And I'm working on hashing out a strong argument for that, but that involves a lot of research. But it also, it applies to philosophies. It unifies our religions, our politics. It has implications for absolutely every aspect of human life. Anything that humanity has created as a result of their consciousness can be affected by this shift in perspective on what consciousness is and where it comes from and how we interact with it as human beings. So what was the phrasing of the question again?
They were asking, why go with consciousness? Why assume a conscious energy if none has ever been found or even hinted at?
The big thing is that it's a thought experiment. You know, I'm not saying that we should suddenly assume that there is absolutely 100% a scientific fact that conscious energy is the substrate of the universe. What I'm offering is the idea, a hypothesis that essentially unifies absolutely every aspect of human consciousness, of our history, of our art, of, you know, what we have produced as human beings for as long as we've been recording what we're doing. And it's a big picture. And it's difficult to swallow. And I've actually had people who, when I first came to it, I was very, you know, almost manic in my attempts to get it out and talk to people about it. And I actually had a friend of mine who was explaining it to a friend of his, and she got up and left the room. She said, I can't be here anymore. I can't talk about this. I can't have this conversation. I need to go. So, you know, this is something that, you know, I prefer to be upfront about the fact that it's difficult. It's difficult to talk about. It will question what you think it is to be a human being, what you think reality is, who you think you are, and it's offensive on a lot of levels. And I think that's what I like about it. I'm a little bit confrontational in that sense, but it's not strictly a scientific precept. And if all we're doing is attacking it on scientific grounds, you're going to find a lot of ways to poke holes in it. And I don't have any qualms about admitting that, but it extends far beyond our science in that way. So I think that the practical implications in your personal life and your personal concepts of self and universe, that's where it has the biggest impact.
Excellent. So for those of you that are watching this at home, if you don't have values that you commit to the point where you can answer a question like Drew just did, I think that you need to commit to some values, because this dude's trying to figure it all out, right? He's not coming from just a scientific perspective. Science is just a tool in his toolbox. He's trying to get at aesthetics and music and why we cry, and he's trying to get at it all, and he's coming at it from a completely different perspective.
And I think that was the big thing, is that it used to be that science was the only thing in my toolbox. And what was so remarkable to me about the experience was that what I realized first and foremost was that I just didn't get it. That there was something that is very difficult to articulate to other people, to communicate verbally without having the experience yourself. And then once I had that experience, I realized that there's this huge data set that, there's this, whatever it comes from and whatever you explain its source as, however it is that you want to look at it, there is a real tangible experience that people have been going through for as long as we've been painting on cave walls that is essential to our humanity. And to write that off as just, the many ways that we use to just marginalize and say, oh, it's just, we do that because human beings needed something to believe in to get through the day. It's a lot deeper than that. And having the experience finally made it real for me in a way that it could not be without having the experience yourself.
Mm-hmm. So I just got a thought, and I'm going to lay it on you real quick. I think that one of the gifts that you have is not going to be your ability to articulate exactly what that epiphany was. Right, because phenomenology is just such one of those things that is read the same for everybody, right? Is soft the same for everybody?
Right.
What I mean? Like senses are so difficult to communicate in words. That I think that's going to be a craft that you perpetually hone for the rest of your life. Your ability to get detail and articulate the epiphany that you've had, right? But I do think that the gift that you're going to eventually hone in parallel with that is how an epiphany can be an inspiration. Because, dude, you're on fire. Seriously, you're on fire about just like getting your message out there, about communicating and having these arguments. You're calling them arguments. I don't see you as argumentative. I see you as just like you're throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
And maybe it's the Italian in me, because that's what we do with the spaghetti.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, the process over the last 2 years has been my emphasis the whole time, is that this is not about me. I was accused in the very beginning in my manic attempts to communicate of wanting to start a cult or thinking that I was the new Messiah or like the second. There were so many things like lobbed against me, and I wanted to make it clear from the very beginning that like this is not about me as an individual. This is about an idea that is much bigger than any one person, and that the best way that I've seen to really take myself out of it, or I hope, is to openly make mistakes all along the way, to include as many people as possible in the process as I go, so that at any point we can look back and say, well, here's what I thought at one point, and here's why that was wrong, and here's what we've learned since then, and what we got out of that. And that's a big part of it for me, is getting it out there and talking about it, because it's something that's so big that I would never be able to handle it on my own. I would never be able to hone it in and make it something really concise alone. It's my mind is limited to the way that it works, and I need alternative perspectives and extra help chiseling away at the trimming the fat.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many layers. I mean, you could be talking about this for the rest of your life, man. And you've done so much work in 2 years. I can't wait to talk to you in 2 more years, 5 more years, 10 more years. Yeah. I mean, just to see where you've gone with this concept.
Hopefully somewhere good. I mean, and this is a big part. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe we can get some other people involved and more direct. There's a lot of things that I've tried to do where it just, if I don't get like feedback right away, then I'm not I can't put the time and energy into something. So I've thought about starting groups and getting people together, and there just hasn't been that momentum off the bat to really make me think that it was worthwhile. But I'm hoping that this hopefully will be the start of getting a little more conversation going, at least getting some more perspectives on it, or criticism, even if it's just criticism, that's enough.
Well, I don't think that's the only thing that you would be getting going for you. And like I said, I wanted to pull you onto the show. I definitely wanted to get you in as a guest here on the New Covenant group because I think that your perspective is certainly unique. Like I said, as an atheist who accepts spirituality. Not too many people are willing to talk about it because some of the hard hitting atheists that I've had on the show before, like Aaron Ra or Bionic Dance, I don't know how comfortable I would be talking to them about spirituality because it's just not one of the boilerplate topics that atheists talk about between each other.
And that's part of the difficulty that I have now is that I don't have any kind of kinship with most people. That if you're a religious or spiritual person, I probably disagree very profoundly about some of your conclusions or dogmas. And then on the alternative, if you're an atheist, you're not going to want to listen to anything that I say because I'm limited to our language. And so many people speak of these things in such a way that is preposterous to the rational mind that to use the same words, you automatically get lumped in with that group where you must believe what they believe because you're using the same words. I try to I pride myself on my attempts to be able to talk to anyone in the language that they are accustomed. I can speak to a Christian and use the metaphors that they're used to, or I can speak to a Buddhist or but when you talk to an atheist, you can't really use any metaphors because there is no common symbolism to really use through that. So it's pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. But the fact that you're not just an atheist, the fact that you're not a theist, you're in this in between. You're in this middle path,
right?
Where you're not atheist enough, and you're definitely not a theist. So it's like, so who do I affiliate with? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, that's pretty much the end of the show. I just wanted to give you props for the way you handled yourself today.
Well, thank you.
No doubt. And I also wanted to thank you for spending the time to talk to me about your perspective. And you have an open invitation. This is part one, which was the introduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, again, I appreciate the hell out of the opportunity and would certainly be happy to come back on and
oh, yeah.
Have some tougher questions, maybe.
Oh yeah, well I wasn't gonna throw too many hardballs at you this first time, but that we're gonna get together for some barbecue because we're in the same city, and I'm gonna work some questions in that'll be a little bit more hardball the next time.
All right, excellent.
If you're up for it.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, I'd like to thank everybody who's tuning in for watching, and I will be recording a little post-show jam and posting it on my YouTube channel. If you are interested, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch archived episodes. It is at youtube.com/user/Moutyman. That's MAUTEMAN. Also, if you wanted to join the conversation on Facebook, you can go to Meeting of the Minds. I have a page set up. And if you're unfamiliar with it already, you can also go to Cult of Honesty at Facebook, where we all get together and have awesome conversations. Once again, thank you very much, Drew, and I will see everybody next week.
Thanks. Have a good one.